Hey everybody, this is Rydo and we're back to another recording of Shadowverse. Today is Friday, August 14th. I don't even know what to say really about starting late. Like, it just seems like we're in that shift with my insomnia. So late streams might just be the standard. Let's see. What do I want to talk about first? I guess it would be bearing the lead to say that Fortnite has been pulled from both the Apple Play Store and then the Google Play Store, the Apple iOS App Store. We've done a bunch of things here to unlock more rewards, so I'm just going to go through this. It seems to me, and this is where my opinionated bias is going to come in, and hopefully I'm going to be able to just pull it right back out at that point. It seems to me fairly obvious when you look at the timing and the amount of effort that Epic as a company put into making sure that they were listed on the Google Play Store and the Apple Store, that this was Epic's plan all along, was to actively violate their contract. And this is again my take on it, my opinionated bias on it. They seemingly knew from day one that they were not going to stay within the terms of the agreement with the Apple Store and the Google Play Store, and that they were planning to at some point put in direct payments inside their own app, bypassing the 30% cut. You know that this is true because they had already created the Epic Store to do the exact same thing to Steam. It's sticking your head in the sand to believe anything else is true. So they went into these contracts with bad intent. And at the face of it, if a business starts doing business with you with bad intent, and I think Walmart does this a lot too, where they'll get into contracts with providers and then just actually never intend to honor the contract. And I think Amazon.com is fairly guilty about that also. So that is like unethical, to say the least. Probably fraud, if not in a provable legal sense, fraud at least in the common vernacular sense. It's just not what you should have done, frankly, in my opinion. Epic had their side-loaded APK for Google, and that was the way they were bypassing the 30% cut going for the payment processing / for just being advertised on the storefront, which I can definitely attest to the fact that Fortnite being on the Google Play Store got Fortnite advertised a lot, like a ton, because there's a lot of automated advertisement, and I imagine on the Apple iOS store that is the same case too. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if there were editor picks, if there were the top 10 lists. There was a lot of free advertisement that you get if you're a good app on an app store for the not so free price of 30%. On top of which, on Google, and there is a slight difference here, I think, between the Google and the Android operating system, which is open source, is that at any point they could have always had the sideload apps. I guess I'm just going to play a little bit of Unlimited, and I haven't built a deck, so I need to think about building a new deck at some point here. Like, it probably wouldn't hurt to do that right now. A new Unlimited let's go with Urias. Yeah, Bloodcraft deck. The Google Play Store actively scans all software to make sure it's virus free and safe. That includes, I think, even software that is sideloaded. So there is a benefit to being on the Google Play Store and getting your software verified as safe versus a small warning saying, hey, we can't guarantee that this app is safe otherwise. And I imagine to some extent Apple does the same. Now, Apple is the walled garden, so they definitely do have a worst case because they could very easily be shown to be acting monopolistic. It would very much not surprise me if some lawsuits did happen here, and Epic is literally suing to have Apple and Google marked as monopolies, and I have no love for either of those companies, and in a lot of ways they are monopolies. And I think Apple both owning the hardware completely in that vertical, like owning every single part of the components that go into the hardware that can run the Apple hardware, is monopolistic, and owning the software. Microsoft, for instance, had similar problems in which they would have been in big trouble if they had tried to become like IBM and sell the computers and the software. And that's why computers are fairly open. As far as any company can build the hardware, and the software for Windows will probably run, or at the very least there's some other Linux build or BSD build, some other operating system that can run on that hardware. Google doesn't have that same problem because, well, Google makes the Google Pixel. That's pretty much the only thing Google does as far as hardware, and there's plenty of competition there. Plus, again, Google allows sideloading, so like these issues have been already fought out with the Android operating system, and Google putting their little branding on top of the open Android, the Android open source stuff, which is also built on Linux, so it would be, again, an argument to be made there. The core of this also, I can't see myself from the other perspective siding with Epic in any way. Like, I really am trying here, and I think unless you are a 9-year-old who plays Fortnite, who is getting their news directly from Epic and Fortnite, and basically Fox Newsing yourselves into just an extreme bias that way, I don't know how you see them as anything other than the provocateur. They went into a contract with dirty hands. They intentionally violated it by putting their own credit card payment processing system inside their app. That payment processing system could have a different level of security. It could be way less secure, and thus the protection that everybody else has had is not mentioned to, is not being given to people playing Fortnite. Like, if those direct payments came back and those credit cards got stolen, people are still going to be upset with Apple and Google, even though they had nothing to do with it. So yeah, if there was a different company running the stores for the Android operating system and the iOS operating system, so there was like Apple was running the hardware of the iPhones, but then let's say Microsoft was actually running the store for the Apple hardwares, and then let's say on the Google side, Google was only running the software and they weren't selling any hardware. That would be a more separated issue, certainly, but it really probably wouldn't change too much. But yeah, I can't see any way that this isn't Epic and its fault. Epic is basically acting like a Karen, frankly, when it comes down to it. I'm putting a hot take here, but that's really what they're doing. They're acting like a Karen. They're creating a scene and then recording themselves on their video phones to create the scene, and in their mind they're justified when they're the ones that created the scene in the first place. And it's just, people see through it. I hope the courts are smart enough to see through that kind of nonsense, and I just don't think that this is going to go anywhere. One company coming to the government saying label this other company as monopoly isn't going to probably work, even though there's a lot of argument that they are monopolies. The US government, the Senate, the Congress, the representatives, all of them, they have no actual desire to label anything as a monopoly or do anything then to help the economy at all times, no matter what. And by help the economy, they mean help big businesses succeed and gain more power and more control. That's just how things work, frankly. So yeah, there's just kind of no way I can even begin to side with Epic. Epic acts noble. They're pretending like they're noble, but they're not. Like, I'm sorry, I've just seen too many YouTube trolls, too many people online that pull this BS, and once you've seen it once, you kind of know where it's going. And even if people are to side with Epic now, you're just gonna be horribly disenfranchised later, because if Epic did win this fight somehow, like massively win it, imagine what that would be. That Apple is forced to have an unlocked bootloader at all times so that you can sideload apps, which you can already do, and it really only disables like a few security features like the fingerprint reader, which I'm not even sure that's that case anymore. So I don't know. Let's say that happens and that there is like a secondary store on iPhones and Androids. Is that secondary store actually going to benefit you any? Do you really think that all of a sudden Fortnite in-game apps are going to get cheaper? Because if they were going to get cheaper, Fortnite could have done that at any point. Fortnite's making tons of money, and the only discount they're offering right now is more worthless in-game V-Bucks to cover the 30% amount of real-world money that they would have had to been paying as a way of supporting the App Store. Now, also Epic tries to label it as a payment processing fee, which, yeah, 30% for a payment processing fee is high in almost every other scenario than video games, but it's not really that at all. This isn't just a payment processing fee. It is giving your dues to a organization that is acting in the best interest of you, the game seller, so that there's a healthy storefront there. What you don't want, and in all fairness, there is a great argument to be made that the Apple Store and the Google Play Store isn't really a healthy storefront, and that's I think an argument to be made, certainly. But you don't want it to become the Indiegogo of storefronts. You don't want it to become like the Nintendo eShop, where it's just like impossible to sell anything and it's just flooded with garbage software. And arguably they are, certainly, but Epic's not going to create a secondary storefront that fixes that. If they won, that they're not going to do anything. They're going to just slowly raise the price, or keep the price the same and keep all the money. And it's ridiculous for Epic as a company to pretend like they're doing something noble when you know that they're owned by Tencent. You don't have to get into super political thinking to think, hey, this is a company that has no problem being owned by basically the Chinese government and all the terrible things that the Chinese government does. And here they are now saying that they are in the moral right, when that totally isn't the case. And so I wouldn't put it past people to eventually realize, hey, this was actually just the Chinese government trying to create controversy around the election time. Like, we're 90 days away from the election, and keep the United States people upset with each other and fighting with each other. This is straight out of what Russia's playbook typically is so slow discourse amongst the US citizens as much as possible, so that you can then make an argument that the United States is a weak, corrupt country, which in fairness, some of that might be true, but it is an effort, certainly, by many countries out there to knock down and push the United States and insult the United States so that their countries look better in comparison, whether that's a fair comparison or not. So yeah, that's my opinion on it. It's very opinionated. I failed to really step out of that opinion. This is literally not going to go anywhere for any time soon. The worst case scenario would be Apple and Google cave. Apparently there are a few apps that have been whitelisted as to not requiring the payments to be processed, not requiring the 30% cut to go through. I don't know, like one of them that was exampled was McDonald's, so I could kind of see how perhaps there was a unique negotiation, and that's really all that would boil down to, is if McDonald's gave a flat fee to Apple, or negotiated very well with Apple to have a different contract that says, hey, we want to be able to let people order McDonald's pickup or delivery without paying 30% more, and Apple said, okay, yeah, that feels like something that we would be willing to agree on. That literally has nothing to do with the offer and the contract that was offered to Epic, and that Epic dishonestly agreed to follow. This is not a deck that's particularly good, but we'll try it anyways. I haven't been paying enough attention. But also, I don't think I have a ton of Vengeance cards or Bloodcraft cards. Anyways. So, what I should do in this is I should come down here. I should choose an unranked unlimited. I should choose this, and I should start playing there. So yeah, I can't see any way with siding with Epic here. And some of that certainly is their previous actions. It's not a previous bias in the fact that they created the Epic store. There is a way in here, if we went back in time and redid all of the actions of Epic over the past couple years, there's a way here that Epic could have been like a Nintendo type character that we just always would have sided with and would have been beloved regardless of how terrible they actually act. There's, for instance, if Epic was not owned by Tencent, that's an easy thing. Just say, hey, we're not going to allow ownership there, and that solves a lot of problems there that come up when any other controversy comes up. Also, almost certainly there's a good argument that these problems are coming up because Tencent is putting their influence on Epic. When Epic started their own storefront and released their game Shadow Complex for free, and they were just going to have their 4 or 5 Epic games that they had at that point, that would have been perfectly fine at that point for them to slowly but surely add more features, to add more of a storefront there. And they had over a year to work on their storefront and add things like 2-factor authentication and payment processing and all of that, instead of having it just be a game launcher that one day just magically they said was a storefront and they had not put any of the work or practice into it, to the point where there still is an unsatisfactory level of features in the Epic store. Had Epic not purchased a bunch of exclusives until that storefront was well received and working well, that would have fixed a lot of the complaints there, although Epic Store exclusives would have always been controversial. Had Tim Sweeney particularly been known for being this vigilante for causes that would not directly benefit himself, that would have bought him then there would have been more of a benefit to that. Also, like,
how's this? Scary enough? Yeah.
The problem is every time Epic comes out and says that it's for this or that, it's only for those things because they benefit Epic themselves, and they are so obviously self-serving.
Coming at you.
This little guy's my partner.
Here we go. On Twitter, apparently
No, I didn't lose yet.
Apparently the Blair Herder retweeting something about Donald Trump and calling him a racist, which, yeah, I mean, if you're just about to start G4, last thing you would want to do is irritate potentially half of your audience.
Let's have a sweet time.
Like, let's face it, there is a decent amount of right-wing conservative video game players out there. Blair Herder's Twitter, like a lot of Twitters, frankly, are far too open, far too public, for what's being put on them. And people seem to have never figured out what Twitter was supposed to be, or they seem to have been pushed to an extent where they just don't care anymore. Well, I guess with that, that's all I have to say with the Epic thing. Like, as much as they will rake Google and Apple over the coals for basically free advertisement for those senators and such, they're not going to do anything to them. Not really. There's not going to be a major antitrust investigation. There's not going to be one for, frankly, I would say ever again, unless something major happens. If there was going to be a major investigation of anything, it would have been the banks in the last housing collapse, and they didn't do that. Disney could have been the focus almost at any point of an investigation, and it hasn't been. You have, in this downturn, a lot of major companies also just getting rid of and eliminating they're like eliminating the major parts of their, let's see, why would I want to do that though? Just end the turn. Major parts of their companies that are not making enough money for them. So there's rumors out there that AT&T is going to be selling off Crunchyroll to Sony, which I guess at some point AT&T merged with whatever company was owning Crunchyroll. And major layoffs at DC we've seen, so yeah, and Warner Brothers and all of that. So yeah, there's, I will say, a ton of opportunistic YouTubers out there that jumped on and started streaming immediately. I could have done that, certainly. I just didn't. In fact, for the accountability section, I did basically nothing yesterday. I'm still in that kind of weird position where
The night will be stained in blood.
where I'm not 100% done with all the gameplay and the daily gameplay. Is taking up a decent amount of my time.
Tasty.
So, like, I'm getting daily quests, I'm getting them at weird times, later in the evening than it should be, frankly. And so, yeah. Yesterday was kind of just a unproductive day in a lot of ways. I should have been uploading videos, I didn't do that. I should be scheduling videos. I keep running into that problem. I did decide to go to r/crypto on Reddit and post my idea of a extension / implementation of a password system, and it's not gone so well in the past 12 hours with it, frankly, because the system is designed around oops, that's not what I meant to do. Okay.
I'll take my compensation up front.
Let's go ahead and just get rid of this guy.
Sorrow is sounding.
That, like, there's two people that have commented on it. One person I feel like was was challenging my thesis fairly fairly poorly, in the point where it just felt like either he didn't understand what I said or I didn't explain what I said. I typed quite a lot there. It's definitely a lack of understanding. He's making arguments that the math breaks down one way when I think the math actually breaks down a different way. So that's really where it would, after 5 or 6 going backwards and forwards with him, it boiled down to at this point, anything more we discuss is really just going to come down to a difference of understanding, and I don't think there's going to be any middle ground there. And then the other person was complaining about using colors, which is frankly more of a valid argument. I honestly don't know if having around 16 colors is not memorable by normal human beings, because it's supposed to be a 6-digit code to represent the replacement of something closer to like a 25 character code. The thing there,
Oh, but I've no time to spare for words.
it's supposed to, I don't know how to best do it. It's supposed to be trios instead of actual single characters. So the first input is not just a letter, a number, or a symbol. It's a color, a shape, and a letter, number, or symbol. So that makes a trio, and then there's 6 trios, and then the way that's implemented either increases security or decreases security because of the way the possible solutions are displayed. But the complaint is that humans can't memorize even more than 5 or 6. Interesting. Well, this should do no damage to me.
Your strength is formidable.
But yeah, the person says that humans can't tell the difference between like a colorblind friendly dark blue versus medium blue versus light blue, and that people just can't remember that. I don't know if that's true or not. I would have thought humans could do that. I don't think I have a problem thinking to my head that the first part of this code would be the dark blue number 5 with inside a triangle. Dark blue 5 triangle. How is that hard to memorize? Like, particularly when you have like a self-selecting bias there, where if there was a color that you had trouble differentiating, you could easily just go, I always pick the dark colors and eliminate all the medium shades and the light shades, and then if you know that to yourself, then you could just go blue 5 triangle, easy enough. Also, it has a self-selection legacy support there, where the first color is no color, just clear see-through. So if you can't remember colors at all, it still wouldn't be an issue. But at least that's a somewhat valid argument. It might really be that 60% of people cannot remember a color, a shape, and a character, let alone doing that for 6 of them. And that was definitely the reason why I posted this, is to see if people would give me that kind of feedback. But also I would say, while I am a fan of the concept of kill your babies, which is the concept of don't fall in love with your ideas so much that you're blinded to valid criticism, I almost would add the caveat of don't kill your babies based on the negative responses on Reddit or on online people. What I really would hope is that someone would pick up on this conversation and better understand it, and say, alright, here's the reasons why this is good, here's the reasons why this is bad, here's the reason why this isn't working or not. The color aspect actually is easily fixable. If color actually is something people can't remember, that's fine. I could certainly do something different. It could be a shape, a character, and then another shape on the other side, and that might work too. Or it could be something else that I would think would be fairly recognizable in general. The animal, vegetable, mineral concept is really all it's just boiling down to, is 3 separate things. And my first thought is, if you go back to preschool and kindergarten, what do we teach babies? We teach them colors, shapes, numbers, letters, things like that. And so those seem to be fairly basic things and fairly generic things that are taught to everyone, everywhere.
Just watch.
And see, so the idea that people couldn't memorize colors is almost an argument that in preschool, in kindergarten, we shouldn't teach kids the names of colors, which in that sounds insane.
Stained in blood.
That is it. And I'm not sure I believe that. I feel like people, when they look at cars, car people in particular, can look at a dark blue car and say, hey, yeah, that's a dark blue Volvo, or that's a dark blue Chevrolet. And then they can look at a medium blue car and say that's a medium blue. I think also females are better at giving names to colors, so they probably would have something in their head where they say, oh yeah, that's a teal or aquamarine or prismarine. Prismarine's more green. But yeah.
You're mine.
You will soon learn.
Little pet.
So yeah, the color aspect's not the part that really is too much of a concern. The bigger concern is the other person basically saying that the process severely lowers security, and that there's no way to get around that, and that it's just a dumb idea in general. And it might very well be a dumb idea, but I was hoping more people would hop in, certainly, and give more of a technical reason or suggestions. And in kind of an funny way,
To the dark.
depending on your personality, posting something on a forum like Reddit and getting a bunch of people pooing all over it and being negative, for my personality might actually have been the thing I needed more than anything to push me to go forward with it, because of just the initial I don't want to agree with these people. Defiant attitude as a concept. So yeah, I definitely at the moment there feel more along. Why does this thing not?
This world slip into chaos.
Can't take more than one damage at a time. Ah, that's it.
Isn't demonic armor lovely?
I'm not really playing well at all. I don't know if that's the card's fault or that's just me. But yeah, I'd also say I would hate if people were just going to go and upvote like everything I said and downvote everything everybody else said that was negative, and it just became a popularity contest unless because I'm looking for real information here, not just winning worthless Reddit internet points, which I never really had a chance of getting that anyways. And there is also a thought in the back of my mind that, hey, maybe the crypto and security conscious Reddits are run by people who are just actively trying to reduce security instead of enthusiasts trying to increase security. Also, I feel like there's a certain level of anything different people are not gonna like, and that's definitely true. Everybody would be super unhappy with having to change their change their styled passwords. Everybody would be upset if you had to add one more character to the minimum length of your passwords, and that's always going to be the case. And at a certain point, that it just doesn't matter after that point. Like, yeah, there will inevitably, enforcing people to use a new password system, being people that just don't like it. And inevitably there are people out there that use like 4 numbers as their password for their banking account, where they're going to a website that maybe isn't even an HTTPS website, and they're typing in 0000 to get to their banking account. And yeah, those people need to be forced and need to be stopped from doing that, because that's not secure. The problem that one of the problems that this extension and this idea is supposed to do is to have something that hopefully is a little bit easier to remember, that actually represents the equivalent of having something to a 26 character or longer password, which people are not willing to really do that either, which that has been the suggestion in the past, is that you should have like something close to a 26 long character password that often is built up with just words, like 3 random words with some symbols and numbers in a few places, is just as good, if not better, than a completely randomized password. In actuality, no, that's not true. A completely randomized password manager app that's putting in 100 characters into a password field, which I imagine most websites in particular aren't actually using all 100 of those characters and are just truncating it after a certain amount. There's definitely some sites I've seen that don't even like more than 12 characters.
I knew this would happen.
But that's what it is trying to replace, is something that could be shorter and easier to memorize, that just has more variety, forcing more people to use things that aren't password as their password. Interesting. This is an interesting card. No more gaining play points at the end of your turn.
Dancing in circles and circles.
But yeah, that's where my mind is at. Not scheduling, which it should be scheduling. Not really uploading videos, which I should, and just playing a lot of that. And that's more than enough rambling, I think. And we should just cover the news. There isn't... I say this almost every time. There isn't a ton of news. Not a ton of games are coming out still. I didn't really think about what Epic's current move is, in the sense that it synergizes with probably not a lot of people with a lot of I don't want to do that yet.
Joy and grief bind me.
Like, I imagine Epic is doing perfectly fine. I imagine they're not losing on sales, even though people should be spending less money on V-Bucks. I imagine kids over the summer spent a ton of money on V-Bucks while they were stuck in the house. And so they're probably sitting on a nice little war chest to have this lawsuit, and they scheduled this right as school is starting so that there won't be a major decrease in players on Fortnite that they can't just blame on the fact that school started for a vast majority of United States kids, even though it shouldn't have. Let's see. Enemy follower and amulet.
But I've no time to spare for
And then
once.
heal.
I will keep my promise.
And then this is not vengeance.
Let's have a sweet time.
So let's move on. We have a game here called Dungeon Crusher Kiritan, which this looks like a probably voxel based game that would probably be a little bit more interesting as a cell phone game than a Steam game. Seems like you run around the place and you're just breaking things, which they're saying is a turn-based strategy game. I don't feel like this is really turn-based. Kind of does feel like almost a boombox concept. Oh, so every time you move, the enemies move, and you're trying to break things. And you can rotate the world, and some of the bricks you fall on fall out from under you. It's a giant slime that seems to eat things you break. Well, $9.59 discounted, English, Japanese, Chinese. I'm willing to put this on the fall list. It does kind of look like a different style of game, and it really would just come down to, is there enough of a gameplay idea here, and can that overcome slightly simplistic voxel graphics or not? Okay. I think I've lost anyways. But there is a strategy to this. I don't think we need to talk about the Epic thing. Like, I don't know if I overemphasized how planned this and obvious this is, but yeah, they had filed suit immediately. They had lawsuits ready. If anything, I would say Google and Apple probably should have had their lawyers working on a countersuit against Epic the day they signed the contract, and also, but yeah, they had these lawsuits ready to be released to the public and filed the second they were pulled from the store for their own actions. And there's kind of no counter move there, frankly, because had the only real counter move would have been for the Google and Apple to just have never let them on the storefront in the first place, and then had them just sue them from the word go, saying, hey, we just don't want your business. We've opted here to not do business with you because we don't find you a ideal character. We just don't want you. Which that would be an interesting idea. Certainly. Let's see. Guess we could do this. Put that in there. And that doesn't do anything, so that's all the forced back cards I have. Which I guess does make a question about just how many back cards are we missing? Yeah. There is clearly 4 pages of cards here that would summon more forest bats as a strategy. And that's what I'm going to have to do, is once I start getting enough cards that these kinds of decks make sense, I need to start labeling them as like the bat deck, to make like a bat pun. Then I'm not sure what other things we can do. Like, you can evolve the Cloud Gigas to have a 5/5 rather quickly. You can destroy a random follower. This is probably not a terrible card. So let's just make that small change there. And then move forward. Epic also had a 1984 Apple parody ad ready to be played inside their little theater event. So I mean, all of these actions are going to be shown to a judge at some point, and a judge is not going to just be ham-fisted so much that he can't see who the provocateur is, and I just don't see how this is going to boil down to a judge going, oh, you're so smart, Epic, that you pulled off this coup d'etat, and that you went into a contract knowing that you were going to have this ACLU style court filing to bring the rights to the consumers. It's just not going to happen. I'm a little surprised also that there isn't some kind of arbitration clause that once again would keep everything internal, and that once again would make things look probably worse for Epic than it will for Apple or Google. And there certainly is no love lost for Apple and Google. Nobody's going to be banging the drum for even Google. Google has all kinds of problems with YouTube and its other software, and so there's just kind of no reason to even begin to think that would change. I'm gonna play this so we can see what this does. So stores 1 defense and then puts a moon and sun in your hand, which is a neutral spell to summon the other character, I guess. And this is deals 1 damage to the enemy leader and puts a moon and sun. Interesting. So let's see what happens here. And it does this every time it clashes. So if I evolve this and have it attack the hero,
To the depths of the abyss, the darkness doesn't end.
so I can constantly play this for like 3. Open Critic has an article here. Dead by Daylight now has crossplay. They're still working on Dead by Daylight, which, I mean, good for it. There's no reason to be any more negative than that. Okay. Not sure I want to evolve that one yet. There's kind of no point in evolving this, because it'll just kill itself unless they evolve it. Yeah, once I get rid of all the Fortnite articles, this actually would be a fairly short stream. Let's see, Open Critic has an article here. Fall Guys is giving out a costume and currency due to earlier server issues. Fall Guys seems to be kind of a critical darling. I'm not sure if that really is boiling down to actual like,
Welcome to the world of endless gloom. How's this?
like,
You wouldn't.
I'm not sure if that really is boiling down to actual people being liking Fall Guys. It seems like it's a fairly interesting looking game that could easily lose its player base, and I could see it getting boring after the 5th or 6th playthrough.
You're done for.
So it could be really successful. It could dry up.
Depths of the abyss, the darkness doesn't end.
Okay.
Darkness on this plane.
Let's see. What else do we want? This, I guess.
Have a sweet time.
And what do we want to do here?
Witness the power.
Welcome to the world of how's this? To the depths of the abyss.
There we go. Next, we have a game on Steam called Waiting for the Raven, which is tagged as an early access. Looks like it's a word puzzle adventure game.
New mission? No problem.
It has almost like that Chinese problem of some screenshots looking really good and then some screenshots looking really bad. It's called a Grand Strategy Investigation according to the tags. It visually just looks all over the place. Early access for this type of game seems also suspicious. $12.74 discounted, English only. Even if this was supposed to be some kind of like strategy game, I just don't think there's enough polish here.
Darkness on this plane.
Alright.
Let us conclude.
Welcome to the world of endless. How's this? To the depths of the abyss.
Was it really worth it to evolve this character every single time? Because you can just kind of play that over and over again. Well, that card is working.
To the depths of the abyss, the darkness doesn't end.
Flash, in the name of glory.
Let's speed things up.
There's definitely a lot of balance you have to do playing a Bloodcraft character.
Onward to victory.
Alright. Destroy that one, and that one,
Drunken dream must end.
So far away.
and then play that. Okay. And then end. Gamasutra has an article. The THQ parent company Embracer has purchased the Metro developers for games and others. So that does seem like, I don't know if the Epic exclusive game that was like Metro was really a Metro game or not. So yeah, I don't know. I guess in the other, in the long run, we still don't really know if Embracer Group is doing well by these companies, other than they seem to just want to be the new THQ, and they don't. And there's uncertainty whether they really want to support any of those companies to actually like have them make good games, good new games, in particular.
Should have been quicker.
Wouldn't.
Let's see. Just go ahead and kill this.
Blood and pain awaken me.
It's crazy that I'm playing Great Tree strategies on Bloodcraft. They also acquired the Insurgency Sandstorm developer New World Interactive, along with the Spain-based Crisol Theater of Idols developer Vermilia Studios. Those games, I couldn't really tell you anything about Crisol. Insurgency sounds like a game at least I've heard of. Alright, well, let's do this. And then
Joy and grief bind me.
that didn't work quite as well as it should have. They also bought the mobile live ops provider DECA, DCA. So they're just on a spending spree again, which I guess is fine. There's nothing really to say there. I don't know if I have an article here, but it seems like yet another Ubisoft manager has been fired for cause after an investigation. So it seems like it's still going on. We'll see if I have an article about that later. Marvel's Avenger characters have reportedly been leaked via beta, according to TechRaptor. I kind of would not care one bit. I guess it's Captain Marvel, She-Hulk, Kate Bishop. I don't even know who that is. War Machine, Peter Parker, Frostbite, and Rico. Don't know Frostbite or Rico either. Kate Bishop, maybe she works with Iron Man in some way. See. Let's do this.
I'll show you something nice.
And then don't really have a lot of room here. So probably is smartest just to do this.
Darkness on this plane.
I will
This.
keep my promise. Massacre.
And then this.
My lord.
And I think I've just lost the game. But I am getting them fairly low. So maybe we
On my blade. Victory and
maybe we get
prosperity are
rid of
yours.
some of these lower heal characters. Like the Sweet Fang Vampire. And
To the
instead
depths of the abyss, the darkness doesn't end.
try something else.
My blood is spilled.
At your service.
I don't understand why
Again.
they toyed with me that way.
Now a nightmare begins.
I can't evolve this where this late game probably could have saved me. What could we do to save ourselves from this? We can do this much.
When will I get my happily ever after?
We can do this much,
Darkness on this plane.
but that doesn't give it rush. So that doesn't solve the problem. You should just be able to attack me and win. And see, I'm not getting the daily quests that would be around playing multiplayer, ranked or unranked. So I don't know if there are daily quests that are just around playing a certain number of characters or things like that. I know Hearthstone definitely had a lot of that, and even Magic the Gathering had some of that. Whereas here it seems like it is fairly built around the idea of trying fairly hard to not have any daily quests other than just victories. We could play that, and that's probably not terrible. Play that. That might work. It's probably not a terrible card to have too. Something that would invoke just in case you had no cards, although I think the odds of that happening are fairly low. Moving on, we have a game on Steam here called Ever Forward, which is mixed, which is a shame because this was that game that looked like it might be interesting, although it did also look like it might very well be kinda nothing and just trying to look like an artsy experience when there wasn't really much of a gameplay here. Let's look at the reviews, and I'll leave it on the fall list to give it a chance to perhaps improve. Let's see. Ever Forward has a surreal aesthetic to it and an intriguing story arc. The mellow synth soundtrack and wonderful use of color palettes made the puzzle platformer easy on the eyes. Unfortunately, that's where I stopped giving it glowing praise. The puzzle mechanic developed within this title is rather frustrating most of the time. You're required to carry blocks to specific endpoints while traversing various platforms and avoiding sentry turrets. It's a scenario that is repeated to a fault. Some solutions felt clever, while others timed towards vague and tedious. So yeah, here we have it's okay, it just needs more polish. Positive review. So yeah, Ever Forward not as well received as I would have thought. I think we should probably praise, for as much as we poo on Susan Wojcicki, and deservedly I think so, Ryan Watts, the leading gaming person, did put out a tweet saying we've been making significant strides in live gaming front at YouTube Gaming, which is really just branding now, not a separate thing. If Ryan Watt was allowed put in charge of YouTube in general, I think you'd probably get fairly good service from him, even if you're not a video game live streamer. Like, when he does tweet, it does seem not to be too terrible. He even mentions here Dr. Disrespect and PewDiePie and Jacksepticeye, which I could easily see an SJW working within YouTube intentionally leaving out Dr. Disrespect and PewDiePie. Of course, then his previous retweet is from MSNBC, so you never really get a clean character inside of YouTube. They've actively bias selected to extreme liberal people. I'm actually just gonna scroll down his Twitter feed and see.
To the depths of the abyss, the darkness doesn't end.
Ryan Watts is also the one that just had a baby, so he was also putting a lot of baby tweets, which at certain points you have to just decide what your Twitter feed is. Is it your personal Twitter feed, or is it your advertisement feed? If it's your personal Twitter feed, then why is it open to the public? Like, why am I seeing it?
Hand over your soul.
Well, that's one way to very quickly get vengeance working. Of course, did I need vengeance? But yeah, I would still say Ryan Watt, probably the best employee that I've heard of at YouTube. In all fairness, there is probably a decent argument that none of them should be in charge, and bringing in someone new would be interesting.
Cut through the false.
There we have him playing Leo the Crescent Blade. And twice. Tech Raptor has a review for Banner of the Maid, which looks like it's a strategic game with perhaps a little bit of visual novel elements. Looks like a French Revolution thing, and boy, is that a lot of cleavage. They give it a 9.0. They said Banner of the Maid is an excellent strategy RPG that is hindered slightly by its sexualization of women. Pro strong strategy gameplay, interesting story, fun trust building mechanic. Cons: overly sexualized female characters can be very difficult. This is reviewed by Cody Peterson, who I don't recognize, but I will give him somewhat a fair shake here. This is a little too much for a game where you're really just doing this. Like, there is definitely a level of not knowing your audience and making a product that yeah, making a product that's targeted to an audience that probably doesn't want to play a French Revolution based strategic game is weird. Certainly as a YouTube content creator, if it only goes to a large amount of cleavage, that's fine. But if it goes any further than that, then that becomes a bit of a problem. There is kind of a argument to be made that this certainly has been done before. Right. Storm, summon a force bat. Whenever summon force bats, you give it Bane versus Ward. Alright, well, I'm gonna choose this.
I get really angry, real good.
This has ambush.
Let me take the lead.
And
You are a total brat.
You wouldn't.
let's see, let's go ahead and evolve this one.
You will soon learn.
Tasty. Let me take the lead.
And hit that. Yeah. I'm thinking like the History of the World Part 1, those type of movies, they definitely
Your
had
strength
some
is formidable.
major cleavage showing on Renaissance French Revolution women, and there's some level to that too. And at certain points you could also make the argument that there's just an overemphasis on breast and cleavage in general, but yeah, YouTube's not going to agree with that argument, so moving on. Here we have a game on Steam called Kill It With Fire, which takes the general joke of killing a spider and failing miserably and potentially burning down your house trying to kill a spider or an insect. I don't know if you would really call this like an asset flip game with maybe some even hide and seek elements. Here you have like TNT being placed around here. It's being marked as very positive, so I think this deserves a follow for that rating. $13.49 seems like a little expensive to be listed at, and then a whole bunch of languages with audio, which I imagine this is probably a game that doesn't have any actual talking. This also strikes me as potentially a game that is designed to specifically be a streamer game. So I wouldn't be upset with realizing that it doesn't actually have any lasting power, or that it's not worth playing, unless you're just going to be one of those streamers that overreacts. And certainly I wouldn't be one of those types of streamers, so I would probably just go, okay, here's an animated spider, and I'm not afraid of spiders in the real world more than the spiders that could actually hurt me, and probably would act with some caution around any spiders to not have them bite me. But yeah, animated spiders don't scare me, and animated insects don't scare me unless they're well, insects don't scare me, frankly. I've dealt with enough of them to not have a problem with them. TechRaptor has an article here. Civilization 6 Android brings strategic flair to the masses, which it's an interesting idea. I assume this is not the same game as Civ 6 in general, that the Android version has to be somewhat dumbed down. Although, certainly, playing Civ on a cell phone probably does work a little bit smarter, because of the way probably would be more free to use your free time on a cell phone than sitting at a PC, whereas strategic games like Civ in the past have taken forever to actually play. So
I can't sing another note.
it is a smart port in my opinion, and it's nice to see good quality games or even medium quality games being ported over to cell phones. Let's see.
My emotions aren't useless.
As far as the price, it seems like there are several very expensive expansions. So I'm not sure if the original game is $20. So you're paying $20, and when you're said and done, you're probably playing 60 to 100 plus dollars if you're really into Civ, which is, I guess, a major question. Certainly. See, what do we want to do? I think we just evolve here. What does this card do? This is Roly Poly Mark 1.
I knew this would happen. Ow! Ow! Like this.
So I need to think about, can I make a deck that summons a bunch of Roly Poly Mark 1s, because they seem to be fairly good at defense since they have ward and can only take 1 damage at a time. Shadowverse does come off as a little bit weird in the fact that you have these cards that speak Japanese. Let's see.
I'll show you something nice.
See, if I was to evolve this and then this
Now a nightmare begins.
and then this and then this and then this, and I lost the ability to evolve that, so that card becomes kind of useless. Gamatsu has an article here. First Light for PS4, Xbox One, Switch, and PC launches September 29th, or projection First Light, which is a new game I have not seen anything about from companies I don't recognize. It seems like it's a little stick figure puppeting that you're controlling, which, while that looks like an interesting art style, I'm not sure if there is a light shadow gameplay mechanic here that will actually have an interesting gameplay mechanic here, or if this is just kind of nothing.
Joy and grief bind me.
This is a force bat as compared to a darn it. So I played that out of order fairly poorly. This will just summon a Roly Poly Mark 1 again, so I should have attacked it and killed it. TechRaptor has an article. Red Dead Online's latest updates broke the game for many players. They reverted everything back, but there was just major problems to the point where it's like, how in the world did that get through testing and approval process, their own internal approval process even. Here we have a game on Steam called One Way the Elevator, which is tagged as an RPG puzzle game. It seems like it's probably a fairly simplistic, maybe kid-friendly game, although it's also being tagged as a clicker for $2.79, a bunch of languages. I'll put it on the follow list and we'll see. See, I imagine you just end up in this elevator fairly quickly, and then the elevator just goes up to an area and somebody talks to you and asks you like simplistic question, and that's about it as far as I can figure. I wouldn't be surprised if you kind of never have a I wouldn't be surprised if you never have like direct control over the character or anything like that. Yeah. I'm watching the video and it seems like it's pretty much that. Retro Studios has a design listings here in Austin, Texas, and they're working on Metroid 4. They're looking for leads, graphics engineer, senior level designer, lead animator, the boss AI designer, experienced developer, level 4 lighting artist, lead producer. Here was the one that led me to this point. So there's a couple of issues here. That either means Retro Studios has basically nobody on their team and they lost all of their employees recently and they're trying to replace them all. And the best case scenario that Metroid 4 has been in development up until this point. Worst case scenario is that there's been absolutely no development. They've just been in like pre-production for Metroid 4, Metroid Prime 4, whatever it is. I think it's Metroid 4. I don't think it's a Prime 4, but it might be. I don't know. I can't even remember. Either way, it doesn't really sound like good news for the amount of commitment and the amount of progress as far as that game series should be. One would have kind of assumed that at this point,
Stay beautiful.
the
Dream for eternity.
Like, yeah. At this point, one would have assumed that they would have been a lot further in the development process of Metroid, and that it would be just at most 12 months away from being released, where it feels like it might be 2 years away from being released.
Your strength is formidable.
And there's definitely some tweaks that need to happen here, and a lot of cards in general that just kind of need to go. For instance, this one. We haven't been able to play that one actively. And then this one probably should go. And then this one should probably go. And instead, what I want to play is possibly something mid-game to late game. Something that has a little bit better of a chance. Because we're getting to a level 10. Which... something like that might be worth trying. And then something like that might be worth trying, although we're never going to actually succeed with these cards. Something like that. So that's 3 very late game cards. Gamatsu has an article here. Skullgirls Mobile and second Encore DLC character Annie announced. So Skullgirls is still adding characters. Which, okay, that's interesting. One of the videos I streamed showed a like Lego thing, and Lego claimed the advertisement there. So once again, Lego's not particularly great on understanding that they can't copyright ads for their sets. No content ID claiming it. The good news is I don't deal with Lego too often, so that would be fine. And frankly, if you were going to have a Lego channel, you probably have to try really, really hard to not justify it as a made-for-kids content, which shouldn't have ads or content ID claims on it anyways, or they'd have claims, but then they still wouldn't get ads. So, yeah. I definitely know a lot of the Lego channels that I watched kind of very quickly gave up on trying to make any money on YouTube because of that. For better or for worse.
Hear the dragons roar.
Bloodcraft here definitely comes down to an idea of just how important is having vengeance activated. And in this case, this increases every time you've taken damage, so taking 1 damage each turn is better than taking 1 massive amount of damage. TechRaptor has an advertisement again. They're cross promotion with Nutaku, so they have an article. Imagine a better life in Nutaku's lewd producer, which looks to me like a game where it's a clicker game where you're acting as a producer, maybe doing like a casting couch type gameplay. It's being a idol producer, so yeah. A idol producer with a penchant for perving on your girls is the exact quote here. Once again, I would think it's important to mention that the Nutaku games don't ever seem like they're particularly great. Like the College Life one, I'm not at like the maximum level. I'm at like level 15 of level 25, but I really do feel like I'm almost back to where I was the first time via speeding up things and cheating, and there definitely feels like there isn't going to be too much new content or anything that happens. It doesn't seem like there's going to be a new event that happens in the next month where they did have a brief event, and it seems like that one event was the only event they were gonna do.
Hey, I get really angry. Fight 'em real good.
Witness the power.
Kill that.
I will
You
be
are
done.
full of brat.
There we go. Moving on, Gamma Sutra has an article. EA unifies EA Access and Origin Access branding as EA Play. So the naming scheme now, EA Origin Access Premier will now be known as EA Play Pro. Despite the new branding, each platform will require its own EA Play subscription just as before, so EA's systems and services seem to have been fairly overpriced. Alright, let's do this.
I'll take my compensation up front.
Seriously? How did that break down?
Your strength is formidable.
What went wrong there? Running into a lot of things where the numbers don't seem to quite line up. That seems odd. Also, we're kind of not doing anything today because there kind of isn't a lot more to do. I've done all the practice challenges. I certainly could go into the single storyline stuff and do some games there, but without the daily quests to motivate doing that, there's really not a lot of reason other than it would just speed things up. And we still want to get to the temporary gems as much as we can get to temporary gems, which is not much, frankly. So we do want to try and get some victories here. I should stop playing after this game though. Like, clearly this isn't working. I should go play ranked with my Forcecraft deck, which is working, and I should try and bring up get 3 victories. I should have done that probably 2 or 3 games ago. TechRaptor has an article here. A class action lawsuit targets Clash Royale's loot boxes, which, okay, we'll see if that class action actually works. I did certainly play like Clash Royale. I don't think I ever spent any money on it, so I don't think I would be one of the members of the class. But perhaps they will phrase it in such a way that yes, people that didn't yeah, maybe even people that didn't actually spend money might have a chance of success there. Let's see.
Darkness on this plane.
Let's see if this next one is family friendly. YouTube family friendly. It's always important to mention YouTube family friendly versus family friendly. I have seen that there pretty much has been almost a complete block of any just straight out adult games on Steam. I don't know if that's because there's just a level here.
You will soon learn.
What did I just give it? During your turn, whenever cards are added to your hand from your deck, deal 1 damage to a random enemy. Do this X times X equals the number of cards added to your hand. This effect is not stackable. None of the effects I've yet to see a single effect that actually is stackable.
To the depths of the abyss. I knew this would happen.
but we still, even though we're not getting straight up adult content like visual novels or anything, we're still getting things like this, The Last of Waifus, just a Last of Us spin-off name confusion game with these same anime girls that are pre-bought, and at least they seem to have some cutscenes that probably are pre-bought too. It's being sold for $1.39. This again violating and abusing the bundle system, probably also abusing the achievement system. Like this publisher, the fact that they're still allowed on Steam is a major failure. And yeah, maybe they're secretly blacklisted, and maybe they don't get any like promotion, and only people like me who's looking at every single game that's coming out on Steam ever even see their games. But from the looks of it, I don't even know why you need to go that far with it. It does seem to me like you could just easily say, hey, there's a whole history of publishers like this just putting out games that are low effort asset flip games that have the names and try to have name confusion and parodies. I mean, this really doesn't even fall under the category of a quality parody that should be allowed on Steam, in my opinion. And this would be really opinion, but like Anime Stranding, parody of Death Stranding, like half of these games have anime in it, the other half have waifu. We have Waifu Horror, the 8 pages. Like, just none of this is a level of quality. I didn't know you could have animated images, animated GIFs as your background image, and that's interesting.
I'll show you. Just watch.
But yeah, that level of curation should happen if any level of curation happens, and yet it doesn't happen, and yet there's a great just disparity between whether something is allowed on Steam or not, between is it a low effort terrible game or is it a medium to high effort Japanese visual novel, to the point where at a certain point you can only call it just anti-Japanese sentiment.
Join us.
It's quitting time.
That just, I mean, at a certain point it looks like racism.
Darkness on this plane.
Moving on, Game Sutra has an article. New allegations show the cycle of abuse and misconduct runs deep in Ubisoft, which now I'll believe it. I have now swung to the other side, and I'm just like believing all accusations against Ubisoft at this point. I'm to the point now where I'm trying to imagine, what is Ubisoft even going to look like as a company? They seem to have already lost enough management that either you're going to have a lot of people who deserve promotions getting promotions, or a lot of people who can't handle a management job getting a management type job, or you're going to have a lot of new managers coming in with the hopes of them simply not being bad like the current managers have been.
How's this?
It does really just
Good luck.
open up a lot of doors of, are we going to see a completely different Ubisoft that makes completely different games? Are we going to see somebody come in and sell off Ubisoft? Are we going to get to that Viacom-like hostile takeover? Because effectively, due to their own mismanagement and inability to act as decent human beings, they have left their company in a position where they can't be in charge anymore. So yeah, there's a lot of questions there as far as what does that company look like. Does it feel like a company that people really want to work for?
Welcome to the world of
I briefly worked in an office where there had been some major political wrangling, and there definitely seemed like there was some survivors of the old group of employees that were still around, and that some of the people in that group, I won't say half, still were of the old way things were done, and they still were trying to root out those people. Meanwhile, they're also trying to instill a new like work environment with a group of people that had already been touched and corrupted by it. It would be a lot easier, from my experience, if Ubisoft simply just laid off everybody and became a whole new company with a whole new set of employees, because the picking and the choosing is going to be the nightmare scenario of figuring out, hey, is this a good employee, or is this a employee who has either been disgruntled by the way they were treated in the past, and thus they're no longer capable of doing their job in an efficient manner, in a good manner, or is this an employee who is part of the problem? Because that's really what it boils down to, is anybody who worked at Ubisoft at this point is either somewhat disgruntled or somewhat part of the problem. And I don't know how you fix that. Like, that's basically the years of therapy argument. Like, if you don't want to give up on people, you have to be willing to stick with somebody as they go through years of therapy. But in a corporate environment, you just don't do that. You just give up on people. You fire them. You move them on to the next job. And in all honesty, I feel like firing people can at times be the best thing you can do for them. Giving them like giving them some months of unemployment and giving them a break and letting them relax and reevaluate and think about what kind of job they actually want to work at. I mean, you certainly also, in all fairness, potentially could ruin someone's life by firing them, but you can also ruin someone's life by keeping them miserable in a job that they hate and that they're getting stressed out on, and that they're getting angrier and angrier every day. And yeah, if you're a really nice guy, maybe you can help the person find another job and not fire them. But that certainly becomes dangerous if you say, hey, we think you should move on and find a different job. We're not firing you at this point, but we don't think you're a good fit here. Like, that's a lot of coded, a lot of language that sounds like coded language, even if you're saying it in earnesty. Moving on, we have Momo.exe Vr, which the Momo internet meme has been dead for a while now, so they must have been really delayed on making this low effort VR game. $11.99 discounted, bunch of languages. A lot of these memes, I just don't ever get the backstory on any of them. And so all I ever see is just a slightly creepily faced character or creepy looking character. And Momo, she doesn't look like that creepy. Frankly, none of these scary characters look that scary at first blush to me. And I would put that certainly with even like Jason Voorhees and Freddy Krueger and all of those characters. Also, there's just, on first blush, they look like they're either burn victims or deformed people. I would say, yeah, when you look at like Hannibal Lecter and the way he was depicted in the different movies, Hannibal Lecter never looked much very scary on first blush, and the Red Dragon character doesn't, even though described as being disfigured, is never really depicted as severely scary because of his disfiguring. And yeah, I would say it's the mentality that's more of an issue, and the way people think that's scarier than the way people look. Like, at the very least, I'll say the only characters that do kind of have an intimidating, scary appearance would probably be the Cenobites from Hellraiser, because those characters, just like on the face of it, just looking at it, you have to be fairly naive to say, all right, well, these guys are into heavy body modification, and they enjoy masochism, so and they've got actual knives and actual weapons on their belts, and torture implements and things like that. Those, on appearance alone, those characters are so extreme that they would fall under the category of scary. Whereas even like Freddy Krueger, if you see his knife hands, I guess he's a little scary then. If you don't see his knife hands, his face just looks like a person who was horribly burned. So he just looks like a burn victim. And I guess like Michael Myers from Friday, the two horror characters that wear masks, I guess there's a little bit of scariness in wearing masks, and they tend to carry big knives too, so I guess there'd be some scariness to that. But Momo on that point, or Slender Man on that point, they just look weird. I wouldn't categorize them as scary. Regardless, that was kind of rambly. We have a game here called The Adventures of Something. This looks like it's a terrible, low-effort game, which also seems to have some stolen art assets in it, and the fact that there was a picture of like one of the Marvel movies shown in this video. It's selling for 98 cents. It's English and Chinese. We're not even seeing a lot of low-effort Chinese games on Steam nowadays. Again, that might be because I'm not spending a lot of time checking my Twitter feed. I'm checking it maybe once or twice a day, and so maybe I'm missing some tweets of new games coming out, but I just think we're in general in a slowdown. Meanwhile, I'm just focusing on other things and dangerously focusing on buying a new computer component. The thing I need to do is I need to look at what motherboard I can actually get and what DDR4 timings that motherboard actually can use, and whether there's an XMP profiles that can be used there, because I am noticing that there are some decent sales going on for RAM, and so probably wouldn't hurt to get 64 gigabytes of RAM. I need to know if it's going to be dual channels or parity dual channels, or whether the motherboard's going to have 8 slots or 16 slots, or only 4 slots. 64 gigabytes of RAM is about as much as I think I could afford and probably need. 32 would probably still work fine, but it wouldn't be any improvement of what I have now, other than the speeding and the timing, and that I am hoping for some major boosts as far as the speed and timings on my RAM, and I want to try to make sure I get that right. There is a possibility that a lot of my current PC settings could be overclocked quite a bit, or aren't even configured to use the right process in the first place. Moving on with news, TechRaptor has an article. Doctor Who Worlds Apart card game is coming to PC and mobile. which apparently is a blockchain-based game. Okay, that sounds insane. So, World of Parts uses blockchain technology to track individual cards, so that makes trading your cards a possibility. That's an interesting idea, but there's a problem here. Certainly in the fact that the Doctor Who crossover games so far have all been pretty terrible. So I can't really assume that this also wouldn't be a terrible example, frankly, of a game. And Doctor Who in general has fallen from grace terribly. Like, people are upset in general with having to pay a license to support the BBC, while the BBC seems to make whatever ridiculous shows they want without even considering the British audience, whether they enjoy it or not, or whether they're serving the British audience or not. This is what I've heard from people upset with the BBC. Now, in all fairness, in the United States, PBS also kind of puts a lot of ridiculous arts and content that doesn't well serve or interest the vast majority of United States citizens. At a certain point, the PBSs in the United States, the different local versions of PBSs, do heavily propagandize arts and entertainment of a stuck-up artsy-fartsy attitude, and do try to push more people into appreciating what they consider high-class art. Whereas, meanwhile, you have kind of dumb, stupid entertainment that is much more appreciated by most viewers of TV. So,
Hey, let's play.
yeah.
Hey, let's play. Hey, let's play. Hey, let's play.
So yeah, there is a bit of a concern to that idea. But yeah, specifically as far as talking about Doctor Who, nobody's happy with the new female Doctor Who seasons. And honestly, to repeat what I've said a while ago, it was probably a year ago at this point, I don't think it's so much Jodie Whittaker and her that's the problem, her or her being a female that's the problem. It was just the writers and what they did with her and the stories they gave to her, and just pushing a general woke agenda where it would have been probably better to just boil the frog, have Jodie Whittaker take over to be the new Doctor, and have her be a standard Doctor, trying her best just to do a David Tennant impression, frankly, and just have some good stories written around her that just are standard Doctor Who stories that are fairly good. And I think also there was a major problem with the Jodie Whittaker series in that there wasn't really an overarching bad guy that was of any importance. Tim Shaw, I believe, was the first season's main bad guy, and he shows up just at the beginning and at the end, and that's it. And none of the companions, both male and female, of the Jodie Whittaker series were good companions. So you had like a poorly written Doctor, and then you had a kind of uninteresting, poorly written companions.
I'm so sparkly. Yeah.
And so, Yep. Doctor Who isn't good. And in all fairness, there is an argument that for Doctor Who to even survive and succeed, it probably does need to swing between bad and good seasons, or it needs to adopt a different kind of mentality than what it had. I think what you should have probably done is thought, hey, we can only get so many years out of Doctor Who coming back for when it did originally return. And so you had that original Doctor who wasn't that good, and then you had David Tennant, I believe, after the original Doctor that came back in the reboot, and then you had like the two Doctors after David Tennant. So had the first series stopped after about 5 years, they would have stopped after David Tennant's run. They could have taken a couple years off at that point, and then they could have come back with the two Doctors at that point, and they would have suffered less from comparison to David Tennant's run, which was really the thing that was the best run of Doctor Who, but because of his acting. And then after those two Doctors, they could have had another break of a year to 3 years, and then they could have come back with Jodie Whittaker. And honestly, if they just had taken a break, the scheduling and the timing and the releasing of Doctor Who shows would have been way better, because that has been always all over the place as far as just how many episodes do you get in a season, how long are these episodes going to be. There's just a lot of problems there that don't get addressed. And then they try to do these Christmas movies with Doctor Who, and then the Christmas movies tend to not actually be good enough.
Just don't.
But yeah, that is getting into a Doctor Who rant, which at this point it's better just not to mention Doctor Who. Next we have a game here called Team Up with a Magician, which is tagged as an RPG. I would say it's probably a visual novel by the looks of it. And we're not seeing any text or gameplay interface except for this text, which makes me think either this is a straight up animated program and not a game at all, or this is a Chinese product. It's $5.24, which seems to be too cheap, and it's English and Chinese, yes. Yeah. 15 basic CGs, 15 images, and then 140,000 words, which seems like a quite a large amount of words there. So yeah, that doesn't need to go on the fall list. If this guy somehow wins, I should eat my hat. With one health of like 14. And none of them have ward or any way of stopping me. Next we have a game on Steam here called Lost Potato, which seems like it's a very small top-down twin stick slasher. By the looks of it, it looks like it might be controlled with a mouse because there's a cursor all over the place. It doesn't look like there's enough variety here though. While this might make sense if you were playing it on a cell phone as kind of like a twist on Robotron, which honestly I think the playfield for even Robotron was way bigger than this. Yeah, I just don't see anything here that would make me want to play this game more than 5 minutes. It's $2.54 discounted, a bunch of languages, 18 achievements. It's probably not a terrible game, but not a great game.
You're too strong.
And I'm just gonna come over here and take a victory because I have committed to not wasting time running up damage and doing fancy things. And that was a win streak bonus, so good thing I was not playing with the Bloodcraft deck in the ranked gameplay. Like, we can, if I just focus on the decks that actually win and only play with decks that I think actually will win, and any time I'm testing anything else, I'll go to unranked, which effectively is the way it should have always been, and I should have always played, then I actually do have a chance of getting higher ranks per month. Next we have a game on Steam here called Cryptics, which looks like it's a full motion video game that looks like it's dealing with some terrorists or kidnappers or gang robbers or something. It's $7.99, English and Turkish, and this really will just come down to, is it well written in English? So I'll just put it on the fall list and we'll see. That's pretty much all you can do. I've still yet to really determine whether you should trade like a 2-mana character to increase the odds of getting a 1-mana character to play on the first turn.
Don't hurt me.
Next we have a game on Steam called Alta Waldheim Town of Turmoil. Alta Waldheim, I guess. Some kind of city builder, but it's at a weird perspective, and honestly looks like a Windows 95 game, which maybe that would have sold in Windows 95 times, but we're not in those times. This is $9.99 English and German, and yeah, it's just not visually polished enough. Over 100 unique events may not even be a particularly high number of events.
May the forest be at peace.
So that is another consideration to think about. TechCrafter has an article here. The Walking Dead Onslaught is coming this September from AMC and Survios. It's a VR title, which just feels like this is the 3rd or 4th VR title from the Walking Dead series that they've tried to make, and I really think they probably should not be going so heavily in VR, and I assume there's a level that they know that's the case too, and they've just overcommitted in that direction.
Help me, fairies.
At some point I need to get around to getting the last bits of the Walking Dead games. I think they're on Steam now, and I imagine on the November sale that would probably be a decent point to say, hey, let's get the last of the Telltale games and let's play them and be done with that series. So at least there's one series on my channel that has kind of finished completely. How do we want to do this? I think we want to do this. And then if I evolve this here,
You're done for.
This is the only way out of the wood.
I can
Strange.
do that,
Help me, fairies.
and that,
Oops, wrong
and I
hill.
can do that,
I've never been
and that, and that. Next we have a game on Steam here called The Heiress of Sorcery, which looks like it's more of a Western animated style visual novel. Doesn't look terrible. Is in that fantasy realm. Not getting into any ridiculous lewd outfits, although there does seem to be an indication of some romance here that might happen, but doesn't look terrible. $9.99. English and Russian. I'll put it on the follow list and we'll see if it's good. The fact that it's English and Russian though does certainly imply more than it probably should. The general idea that this could be a low effort Russian troll game.
So weak.
Oh, I could put a fairy in the field. Do I want to put a fairy in the field? No. In all fairness, I think it is worth saying that we have seen a major reduction in low effort Russian games, Russian troll games. I think they've probably run out of money and realized that it wasn't an effective system to really affect anything, make money or launder money or whatever they were doing with it. Which that was always the big question: is why are there so many low effort Russian games, Russian troll games on Steam? Next we have a game on Steam called Speed Gunner Ultra, which seems to be kind of like a physics demo. Visually it's not polished at all, and it doesn't seem like there's much here as far as the game. Looks like it might be super difficult. It's $5.99, English, Russian, and Chinese. Yep. And just as I was complimenting Russian trolls for not putting out so many terrible games, they put out a terrible game. So, yeah. Next we have a game on Steam called Beat Blast, which looks like it's a top-down bullet hell shooter. And it seems to have some dark screenshot syndrome. And it seems to be a music rhythm game also. And I have no idea how you'd really play that. It's early access for $11.89, and it has full audio for a lot of languages, but only English interface, which is some grade A BS. Alright. Let's see, how do we want to play this? I guess I have to play this, and then this, and see. Now whenever 3 cards are played, it will do 2 damage to the enemy, which will happen quite often. Yeah, we particularly haven't had a lot of Gematsu articles today. Higurashi When They Cry May has its debut trailer. It'll be out this summer in Japan. The Higurashi When They Cry visual novel series seems to continue to go. And I can never really remember if this is the visual novel series where one person is an imposter and they have to figure out who the imposter is, like a magical ghost-like imposter, or what. It seems like the story might also be linear, and at the end of each story, like, one person disappears / dies, so they might be getting down to the point where there's only gonna be 3 people left, which at that point I don't know what you do to continue the story. But yeah. If that is the game I'm thinking about, it's like there's a curse on the city or something, a curse on this rural neighborhood. Next on Steam, we have a game called Anaria Battle Royale. Seriously, how did I lose there? There goes my win streak. Yeah, there's definitely still a problem with trying to play these games and also pay attention to other things. So here we have something that's labeled as a battle royale, and it's mostly negative, and I think I'd say it's visually polished enough that I wouldn't just immediately dismiss it as an asset flip game. It's early access for $17.99, English only. See what the negative responses is. Let's see. Trash, don't buy this game. Here's a few reasons. It's crashing every time, it's unoptimized, it's clunky, and not like H1, servers are crashing with 30 players. Really bad gunplay, crashes every 5 minutes, clunky movement, gun spawns are very spread out, spawns are often terrible. Okay, well I guess that would be the reason for the negative reviews. That does make sense. Next we have a game here that might be the beginning of a whole new genre of lower effort asset flip games where you're running a claw crane company, which these have started to become more popular I think in Japan and outside of Japan, where you're using a mobile app to potentially spend real world money to control crane games virtually, and then a lot of these services then mail whatever you actually win to you. And I wouldn't be surprised if there isn't a shipping and handling and processing fee that just increases the cost to get these fairly worthless stuffed items or crane game toys. Visually, this video game version of that looks terrible, and the general concept does look fairly terrible too. Now in Japan, most crane games in an actual arcade are programmed, and they're all adjustable, but they're programmed to literally not be winnable in most cases. In the United States, where they are fairly winnable in Japan. And I imagine what these crane game companies are doing is they are programming the crane games to be more like the Western crane games that have a very low chance of winning, and they're trying to sell that up and offer that to the Japanese audience. Also, I would say there is like kind of some money laundering, I think, going on in the whole process, because in Japan you can go to these crane game arcades, win stuffed items, and then you go to the store next door and you sell the items and get money back and even make a little bit of profit, which probably is allowing like the Yakuza to money launder. I don't know if that's really what's happening, but it does certainly feel like something like that is going on. So I would highly recommend not letting any kids or letting yourself play any of those crane game virtual things. Like, if you're actually in an arcade, particularly if you're in a Japanese arcade and you want to play a crane game, that's one thing. But having so many factors potentially change, like, is just a dangerous precedent. It's not something I think people should be doing with their time and money. That was a mistake. I should have evolved this one. Next we have a game on Steam called Mad Mosh, which looks like it is in a low effort asset flip game where you're dressed all in black with a bunch of other characters all dressed in black in kind of a mosh pit type dungy, dark and grungy warehouse that's been converted into like a mosh pit.
Let's teach you how powerless.
It's clearly a joke game. I wouldn't call it a troll game. It's $3.99 English only, but it does look like it's a joke game. There is an idea certainly there where if you were gonna have a mini game section or a secondary gameplay mechanic where you get in mosh pits and you're moshing, there is something, I guess, to that idea, but I don't really think that would work as an interesting experience.
It's time to conquer a new domain.
Good night and good luck.
The Marvel Avengers beta is on Steam. It's getting mixed reviewed, and I guess to play it you have to pre-order and buy the deluxe edition with De Nouveau for $7.99, or the standard version for $59.99. I mean, I can put it on the follow list, but every single thing I've heard about it seems to me that it is a low effort, free-to-play type game that they're charging a premium price for, and that they're just putting the Marvel licenses on, and it's just not, there's just no game there, and there's just no love there. And yeah, I don't know how you really fix something like that other than to say, hey, this is not the type of game that we should have made in the first place if it was gonna be an Avengers game. It is kind of the antithesis of what the Spider-Man games have been, which seem to be that the Spider-Man games are fairly well designed. Next we have a game on Steam here called Frog World, which is either a game where you actually just play as a frog, or it is Frog Fractions 2.0, or it is someone trying to get some name confusion with Frog Fractions. I've heard that even with the new DLC, the Frog Fractions on Steam is still really not a very long property. It in the sense that you beat the whole thing in less than a few hours. Okay, 6. I would have to do something like this. And that wasn't right. I would have had to do that. And then I guess we just go ahead and do this.
Time to break some faces.
You're dumb.
That's more options there than I remembered. And then for the final tab we had open, we have Ragnar's Chinese Memory Game, which, yeah, trying to play Chinese memory seems like that'd be very, very difficult for a non-native Chinese speaker. I've seen, I've been playing like some Koi Koi Hanafudo game. I installed a free one on my cell phone, and it has a memory type game, but it kind of doesn't even work that way. And I probably would have better luck playing with Hanafudo cards than playing with Chinese memory tiles of some sort made out of what looks like bamboo. Okay, what can we do? Gonna have to evolve something. Can we evolve anything that would be an 8? That would actually get on the field. We can do this.
Why are you here?
And we can evolve this.
It won't be long now.
You won't get away with this.
And then we can play this.
Hey, let's play.
We can do this.
Let's play.
Stop.
And we can do that. And that didn't do enough damage. Because it can't take more than 1 damage per turn. Per attack. Or at a time. Alright, well then that brings me to the Humble Bundle store. And this will be our last game. Even though there's a lot more games to be played.
Oh, come on!
We have a Killing Floor bundle at the Humble Bundle. Which I'm not sure how many of the Killing Floor things I actually have. Or even would care to have. And then it has Killing Floor Incursion if you spend $15 more. There's a lot of DLC clearly for the Killing Floor. But if you like that game, and I think there is a small niche audience of people that do like that game, I could see that making sense. Alright.
Why are you here?
This ends here.
You won't get away with this. Stop.
All I can do is just try and reduce his amount of attack. Let's see. There's a Create Comics and Manga bundle, which I always feel like those are pretty terrible
Whoa, you're
books.
strong.
Let's just go and show what it is. Like, first of all, if you want to draw, I think almost all of these drawing books are terrible. Like, and they send kids down the wrong path. In general, I think that there's a lot to this. A lot of BS happening here. If you want to draw a manga, you pretty much have to be Asian. You're just not going to be able to learn it and learn it as good as Asian kids. And you probably should just embrace your own art style or your own culture's art style. Certainly. Is there anything else to do with? I will say also I've seen plenty of these how to draw anime characters books, like secretly backdooring a lot of anatomy lessons and overemphasis on drawing nudes and drawing anatomy correctly, which in fairness drawing is a lot of drawing nudes and anatomy correctly, but at a certain point it does kind of feel like some of them are just like porn mags for artistically creative 12-year-olds instead of actually teaching anything. Like, if you want to learn to draw, you need to practice drawing a lot, and you need probably to take classes in drawing. See, I'm like 3 hours away, and see, this is the problem, certainly, is that the time at which it resets is fairly inconsistent. Getting unranked victories or ranked victories is fairly inconsistent. As far as achievements, there's only so much more that will practically actually happen or actually offer much as far as rewards. And score rewards should really just be our next focus, and a lot more effort should be put into getting to multiplayer score rewards. Which I'm not sure that this score actually doesn't just go up and up regardless. So if you lose several games and lose like 100 points and then you gain back that 100 points, maybe it's just saying, well, you got 100 points at that point, and so maybe getting to the 100,000 score is a lot more reasonable than it seems like. Although, in all fairness, it seems like it's been about the first of 4 weeks, and we aren't really anywhere close to 1/4 of the way done. And I wouldn't be surprised if actually the score reward is kind of designed for players who want to constantly, every day, play tons of Shadowverse. So finally, that brings me back to my Twitter feed, and I'm just gonna scroll down my Twitter feed and think, see if there's anything new. See, some Penny Arcade thing is being retweeted by Phil Spencer, which I kind of feel like Penny Arcade has lost all its relevancy. And in fairness, that's probably just a lot of the case for a lot of people. And I don't think I ever had any relevancy, in all fairness. And yeah, I'm just scrolling down my Twitter feed, and either Twitter is messed up. Yeah, Metroid Prime 4 is the Metroid game that is being developed, or seems like it's just starting to be developed. So yeah, I think what I have to do here, and unfortunately this is the case a lot of times, is I think I'm gonna have to scroll all the way down to the point where it triggers Twitter to decide whether it wants to pull new information. Apparently Rode microphones just got a certain number of subscribers, which the Rode microphones seem to be a decent product, but it is weird for a YouTube channel that is effectively just going to be a advertisement and support channel would get any level of success. It would be the equivalent of like Microsoft Windows having a YouTube channel, and while Microsoft Windows YouTube channel probably could have a decent amount of information around it, the idea of it potentially being labeled in the same class as an actual content creator is kind of ridiculous. Because, and at a certain point, maybe there should be some subcategories of, hey, these YouTube channels are support channels for big corporate entities, and these YouTube channels are indie developers. There was a slight change in the Tony Hawk 1+2 game, in which they've changed the mute grab, which the mute grab was created by a person who was deaf and not mute, to the Weedley grab because his last name was Weedley, which, okay, in all fairness, that does seem like that is a better name for it, and it is just an attempt for them to be a little bit nicer to the people, as Tony Hawk is now an old man and not a like street punk. But there is a certain level of they're losing their street punkness, but skating probably would be better if it did lose a lot of its street punkness and was more of a just standard thing. It would be a better world if there wasn't a lot of like police inappropriate action on kids, ticketing kids because they're skating in places they're not supposed to skate, and all the BS that goes around that. Here's that article I overlooked that. So yeah, skating frankly should be much more like youth friendly and encouraged amongst kids, and it did kind of suffer from going so hardcore in its advertisement that it allowed people that just hate kids in general to use that against them. Alright, so TechRaptor has an article here. As Sharaf Ishmael, ex-director of Assassin's Creed Valhalla, has been fired. So this was the guy, another guy that has been fired, which I guess does certainly boil down to what is Ubisoft going to look like and who is going to really be in charge. And then TechRaptor had another article here. Monster Crown is a grown-up Pokemon game that makes you feel like a kid. Okay. So it does look interesting. Is it on PC though? Or is it just on something like Switch? Yep. It's going to release in the next 6 to 12 months. Yeah, that's pretty useless information. Okay, well, with that, I have exhausted any possibility of any more news happening. So that's going to be it for this stream. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos. If you want a friend or follow me on any social media sites, there's a bunch of links down below. And if you want to support me further, there's a link to Patreon, or you can friend me on Steam and gift me a game off my wishlist.